My name is Amara Osei, and I used to believe that love was the safest place in the world. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, in a small yellow house on Benson Street. My mother, Yetund, was a seamstress who hummed church songs while she worked. My father, Kofi, drove a taxi and always saved the front seat for me. I had two brothers, Dili and Femi, who fought over the television every single evening. It was loud, it was messy, it was everything. I studied hard and won a nursing scholarship to Seoul, South Korea. I was 23 when I packed my one big suitcase and hugged my mother so tight she laughed and told me to breathe. "Amara," she said, pressing her palm to my cheek, "you carry this family's prayers wherever you go." I believed her. I believed everything was going to be wonderful. Seoul was cold and bright and full of people who walked fast. I worked hard at Hanwell General Hospital, learning the language and the rhythms of a new country. I was lonely sometimes, but I had my roommate Bissy and my calls home. I had no idea that within 1 year, someone would take all of that from me, slowly. Quietly, like a thief who smiles while robbing you. I met Junho Kwon on a Tuesday night in October. I had just finished a 12-hour shift and my feet were screaming. Bissy had dragged me to a small restaurant near our apartment. She said I needed hot soup and fresh air, and she was right. He was sitting 2 tables away, tall, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore a plain black jacket, but everything about him said money, the watch. The way people moved carefully around him. The 2 men who sat behind him and never ordered food. I did not notice all of that at first, I just noticed he was watching me. "Stop staring back," Bissy whispered, kicking me under the table. I wasn't staring, I said, but I was. He sent our table a pot of the best beef broth I had ever tasted. The waiter bowed and said, "Compliments of Mr. Kwon." I looked over. He raised his glass slightly like a small salute. Bissy grabbed my arm. "Amara. That is Junho Kwon. People in this neighborhood talk about him in whispers. Be careful." I laughed. I thought she was being dramatic. I should have listened. He found me again 3 days later. I was at the hospital pharmacy when I turned around and he was simply there, leaning against the wall like he had been waiting for hours and had not minded at all. "Nurse Osei," he said. He already knew my name. I held my clipboard tighter. "Mr. Kwon. This is a hospital." "I know," he said. "I came to see you." Something about the way he said it made my throat feel dry. Not in a bad way, that was the problem. He was polite, he was calm. He asked to buy me coffee after my shift. I said no. He nodded like he had expected that and handed me a small card with only a number on it. "If you change your mind," he said and walked away. I threw the card in the trash at the nurse's station. My colleague nurse Una picked it up before I could stop her. Her eyes went wide. "Do you know whose number this is?" I said I don't want it. She placed it back in front of me like it was made of glass. "That man owns half the buildings in Mapo district. Just be smart, okay?" I did not ask what she meant by smart. I was afraid I already knew. I called the number 2 weeks later. I am not proud of how fast it happened after that. But Junho Kwon was not like any man I had ever met. He did not rush me. He did not push. He listened when I talked about my family in Lagos, my mother's cooking, how much I missed the sound of rain on a zinc roof. He took me to quiet restaurants and always walked on the side closest to the road. He learned to say, "You look tired" in Yoruba because I mentioned my mother said it every time I called home. "Our letter woni be 9 wa," he said one evening, his accent clumsy but his effort enormous. I laughed so hard I cried, then I just cried because I missed home. He sat with me through it without saying a single unnecessary word. By January, 3 months after the restaurant, I was falling. I told Bissy I thought I loved him. She put down her fork and looked at me. "Does he love you back or does he just want you?" she asked. "There's a difference," I said. "Amara," her voice was serious. "With a man like Junho Kwon, there is always a difference." I did not believe her. I was so sure she was wrong. He proposed in April, 7 months after we met. We were walking along the Han River at night. The city lights danced on the water. He stopped, turned to face me, and pulled out a ring worth more money than my father had made in 20 years of driving. I know this is fast, he said, but I have never wanted anything slowly. And I want you, Amara. My heart was so full I could barely breathe. I said yes. I called my mother that same night. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Bring him on a video call. I want to see his face." The following Sunday, Junho sat beside me and greeted my parents in calm, steady English. My father asked 3 questions. Junho answered all 3 without blinking. After the call, my mother pulled me aside. "He is a very controlled man," she said. "That's a good thing, Mama." She was quiet. Controlled men are fine until they decide to control something other than themselves. I told her she watched too many movies. She laughed softly and let it go. I had no idea that within 6 months of that call, I would not be allowed to phone her at all. We married in June. It was a small ceremony in Seoul, Junho's business associates on one side, Bissy and Yuna on mine. My family couldn't come. Junho said the paperwork and flights were too complicated on short notice. He promised a big celebration in Lagos the following Christmas. I wore a cream dress with gold thread along the hem. Bissy did my hair and cried the whole time. "You're ugly when you cry," I told her, laughing. "I cry because I love you," she said. "Promise me you'll always pick up when I call." Bissy stopped being dramatic. She held both my hands. "Promise me." "I promise," I said. I meant it completely. The wedding was beautiful. Junho watched me the entire ceremony like I was the only thing in the room. It felt like being chosen. After the reception, his driver took us to a penthouse apartment I had never seen before. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art on every wall, a kitchen bigger than my childhood home. "This is ours now," Junho said. I stepped inside slowly, taking it all in. It was beautiful, it was enormous. I should have noticed right then that he had not given me a key. The first month felt like a dream. Junho was generous and attentive. He bought me elegant, expensive clothes. He hired a housekeeper, Mrs. Park, a quiet woman who came each morning and left by noon. He told me I did not need to work anymore. "I want to keep working," I said. "I love nursing." He smiled, "Of course. I would never stop you." But the following week, the head nurse at Hanul Hospital, Mrs. Cho, called me into her office with an uncomfortable look. "Mrs. Kwon," she said. The name felt strange. We received a generous donation to our cardiology wing. "From your husband." "That's wonderful," I said slowly. "He also requested your schedule be changed to desk duties only. No patient floors." I stared at her. "He can't do that." "Method." Cho looked at the wall behind me. "He is a significant donor. I am sorry." My hands are tied. I drove home in silence. When I walked in, Junho was reading at the dining table. He looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. "How was your day?" he asked. I opened my mouth, then I closed it. Something told me to be very, very careful about how I answered him. I confronted him that evening after dinner. "You changed my work schedule," I said. I kept my voice even. Calm voices got better results than angry ones. I had learned that from nursing. Junho set down his tea. "I made sure you were safe. Patient floors are difficult, hard families, infections. You don't need that stress. I've been a nurse for 3 years. I know how to handle it. You're my wife now. I was a nurse before I was your wife." He looked at me for a long moment. His face perfectly calm. "I will reconsider," he said. I thought I had won something. I went to bed feeling like things would be okay. 2 days later, Bissy called my phone 5 times in one afternoon. I only saw the missed calls hours later. My phone had been on silent and I had not put it on silent. I checked the settings. The volume was all the way down. I stared at the screen for a long time. I told myself I must have done it without noticing. People do things without noticing. I told myself that because the other possibility, that Junho had touched my phone while I slept, was too frightening to hold onto so early in our marriage. By the third month, small things kept happening. Bissy stopped calling. When I asked why, she said she had been calling, but I never picked up. I checked my phone, no missed calls from her at all. My brother Dealey sent me a long voice note. I played it in the kitchen while making tea. Junho walked in halfway through and stood listening without a word. The next time I tried to play a message from Dealey, the file said it had been deleted. I told myself the app had a glitch. Then Yuna invited me to a birthday dinner for one of the nurses. I mentioned it to Junho. He said nothing negative, he just asked what time I'd be home. But that evening my phone died even though I had charged it. I arrived late and everyone had already left. Yuna messaged me the next day. "I thought you weren't coming, are you okay?" I replied, "I'm sorry, phone issues." She wrote back, "Junho seemed very calm when I called him to ask about you." I stopped breathing. "When did you call him?" "About 20 minutes after you were supposed to arrive. He said you'd decided not to come." I had never told Junho I was not coming. I had been on my way. I tried to visit Bissy in person on a Saturday afternoon. I told Junho where I was going. He said fine, kissed my forehead and told me to be home by 7. I took the subway to her building and buzzed her unit 3 times. No answer. I called her phone, it rang and rang. I waited 40 minutes in the lobby, confused and worried. On the subway home, my phone buzzed. It was Bissy. "Amara, I'm so sorry. Someone called me this morning and said you had canceled." I went out. My hands went cold. "Who called you?" "A man, he said he was calling on your behalf." He sounded so sure. I looked out the window at the dark tunnel walls rushing past. Someone had called Bissy, a man calling on my behalf. There was only one man who would do that. I held this knowledge the entire ride home and arranged my face into something calm before walking through the front door. Junho was on the couch watching a financial news channel. "How was Bissy?" he asked. "Good," I said. He nodded and looked back at the screen. I went to the bathroom and ran the tap so he would not hear how hard I was breathing. I started paying attention differently after that. I noticed that Junho always sat nearest to the apartment door at dinner. I noticed my laptop, used to video call home, was always moved slightly from where I had left it. Mrs. Park never made eye contact with me and always finished her work faster when I entered a room. I began writing things in a small notebook hidden inside a winter coat at the back of the wardrobe. October 3rd, Dealey's voice note deleted. October 9th, phone died. Junho told Yuna I wasn't coming. October 14th, Bissy canceled. Man called her on my behalf. Writing it down made it real, and real was terrifying. I called my mother from a hospital bathroom during lunch. Using a colleague's phone, a young nurse named Sua who lent it without question. Mama picked up on the second ring. "Amara, I've been calling. Your number keeps going to voicemail." My chest tightened. "My phone has been acting strange. Mama, has anyone called you about me recently?" "Your husband called 2 weeks ago. He said you were busy adjusting to married life and asked me not to call too often." I pressed my back against the cold bathroom wall. "Mama," I whispered, "I didn't know he called you." I had to be very careful now. I had read about this in psychology books during nursing school, the way controlling people worked. They did not announce themselves. They moved slowly like weather changing, so by the time you felt the cold, you had forgotten what warmth felt like. I went home and cooked Junho's favorite meal, spicy pork rice with pickled vegetables. I set the table beautifully. I smiled through dinner and laughed at the right moments. After dinner, while he showered, I searched his jacket pocket. I found a second phone, small, black, no case. I memorized the number on screen, a recent call from a contact saved simply as W, then put the phone back exactly as I found it. I went to the bedroom and lay down. When Junho came out, I pretended to be half asleep. He stood in the doorway watching me, then got into bed and said, "Good night, Amara." "Good night," I said softly. We lay in the dark, and I realized I was more afraid of the man beside me than anything I had ever faced. But I could not show it. Showing fear to a man like Junho would be like showing blood to something that hunted by scent. I had to think, I had to plan. I found out who W was by accident. A week after finding the second phone, I was restocking supplies at the hospital when Mrs. Beek, one of the older nurses, pulled me aside with worried eyes. "Mrs. Kwon," she whispered, "a man came yesterday while you were off duty. He said he was a security consultant working for your husband. He wanted your full shift schedule for the next 2 months." My skin went cold. "What did you tell him?" "I refused, but Mrs. Cho gave it to him." She hesitated. "His name was Mr. Won." She slipped me his card, white, no company name, just a name and number. W. Mr. Won, this was who Junho called from the second phone. This was who had called Bissy, pretending to be acting on my behalf. Who had called my mother, who had shown up at my hospital asking for my schedule. Junho had hired someone to watch me. To cut the threads connecting me to everyone I loved, quietly, methodically, one thread at a time. My mouth went dry. This was not impulsive jealousy. This was a plan, organized. Deliberate, and it had been running since before we even got married. I made 3 decisions that same week. First, I stopped using my personal phone for anything real. I bought a cheap prepaid phone with cash during my lunch break and hid it in the lining of my winter coat, beside my notebook. Second, I started rebuilding contact with Bissy through Suwa. I would write messages and Suwa would deliver them in person. Old-fashioned and slow, but completely invisible. Third, I kept being the perfect wife at home. This was the hardest part. Every evening I cooked, sat beside Junho while he worked, laughed at the right moments, and asked about his day. I became very good at a performance I hated needing. One evening, Junho looked up from his laptop and studied my face. "You seem happy," he said. "I am happy," I said, holding his gaze steadily. He watched me for 2 seconds, calculating, measuring, then nodded and looked back at his screen. I had passed a test I hadn't known I was taking. That night, I added a new line to my notebook. "He tests me, he looks for cracks, give him none." My hands were shaking when I wrote it. But my handwriting was steady. I was learning something uncomfortable about myself, that when survival required it, I could be completely, utterly still. Bissy got my message through Suwa. 3 days later, Suwa handed me a folded piece of paper tucked inside a lunch container in the break room. "Amara, I've been so scared. I thought you were angry with me. I'm listening. Tell me everything, B." I sat in a bathroom stall and read it 4 times. Then I wrote back. I told her what I knew: the phone tampering, Mr. 1, the call to my mother, the hospital schedule. I kept it factual, the way we wrote patient notes, just what happened, just when. I ended with, "I am not ready to leave yet. I need more information. Only contact me through Suwa, tell no one else." She replied 2 days later. I asked around carefully. Junho Kwon is connected to a group called Chungpa. "It is not a legitimate business. Please be careful. I love you, Chungpa." I had heard that name before, whispered at the hospital once. When a patient was brought in with injuries that nurses were told not to document too carefully. My husband was not just controlling, he was dangerous in ways that went far beyond our apartment walls. I had walked right into the middle of it wearing a cream dress with gold thread along the hem. I researched Chungpa carefully during late-night shifts at the hospital. I used the hospital's computer, clearing the history each time. I found old newspaper articles about organized crime in Mapo district from 8 years ago. Some business registration records. And a name mentioned in a financial fraud case that was later dropped. The name in the financial case was Junho's father, Kwon Taesung. So it was a family business. Junho had not built this world, he had been born into it. He had married me and brought me inside it without my knowledge or consent. I thought about how deliberately he had moved, the slow courtship, the careful listening, the way he seemed to understand me so perfectly, because understanding me meant knowing exactly how to dismantle me later. He had not fallen in love with me, he had selected me. An African woman far from home with no family nearby. A nurse trained to be steady, to manage crises quietly, not to cause scenes. Someone who could be folded into his world and sealed shut inside it. I sat in the break room at 2 a.m. and let the anger pass through me. I did not fight it, I let it move, then I opened my notebook and started planning. My brother Dealey had always been the clever one. Back home, he had studied computer science and now worked for a telecoms company in Lagos. He was cautious and quiet, and most importantly, he kept his mouth shut when it mattered. I got a message to him through Bissy, who created a new account just for this. I told him, do not call me or message any of my usual accounts. Wait for contact from a number you don't recognize. He replied through Bissy, I'm here. Tell me what to do, always like that. No panic, no drama, just tell me what to do. I called him from my hidden phone the following Saturday while Junho was at a meeting. I spoke for 9 minutes. I had timed how long Junho's meetings ran. I told Dealey 3 things. 1. Document our contact somewhere safe. 2. Tell our parents I was okay but share no details. 3. Research the rights of Nigerian nationals in South Korea in cases of domestic threat. Amara, he said when I finished, how long has this been happening? Since almost the beginning, I said. 5 seconds, then I'm going to help you get out. Not yet, I said. Not until I have enough to make sure he can't come after me. In November, Junho told me he was canceling the Christmas trip to Lagos. We were at breakfast. He said it calmly, a business matter in December, we would go next year instead. I looked at my teacup, I had known this was coming. The Lagos trip had never been real. It was something offered early in the relationship to make me feel like the distance from home was temporary. A promise dangled just far enough away that I always had a reason to wait. Okay, I said. He looked up. He had expected me to push back. Okay, he repeated. Business matters, I said simply. He studied my face with that measuring look. We'll go next Christmas for sure. I know, I said and smiled. He relaxed. I watched it move through his shoulders like a slow exhale. I filed it away carefully. He is calmer when I accept things. He watches more closely when I resist. I had stopped resisting out loud. Every yes I gave at home was buying me time. Every smile was a cover. I called Dealey that afternoon. He had spoken to a lawyer, a quiet woman named Attorney Nam, who handled cases involving foreign nationals. She would take my case when I was ready. I was getting close to ready. The moment I knew I had to move faster came in late November. I came home from a shift to find Mrs. Park still in the apartment at 4 p.m., unusual. She was straightening cushions that were already straight and would not look at me. Junho was home early too, sitting at the dining table with a man I had never seen. Narrow face, very still. Amara, Junho said, this is Doctor, I'm a friend. Doctor. I am stood and shook my hand. It's wonderful to meet you. Junho has told me so much about you. After 10 polite minutes, Doctor, I am left. Junho walked him to the door. They spoke in low voices in the hallway. I stood in the kitchen and heard fragments. Adjustment period is normal. If she shows signs of instability, I can visit the house. My blood went cold. Dr. IM was a psychiatrist. Junho had invited a psychiatrist to observe me. He was building a story, a framework that would make whatever happened to me next look like it was for my own good. This was not just isolation anymore. He was preparing to have me declared unstable, which meant controlling my life legally, medically, completely. I had 2 weeks, maybe less. I moved quickly but without panic. Through Suwa, I got word to Bissy, it's time. Get a bag ready, documents, clothes, cash. Through my hidden phone, I updated Dealey and he contacted Attorney Nam. She needed 3 things: proof of identity, proof of marriage, and documentation of the isolation. I had months of notebook entries for that 3rd item. I needed to photograph the pages without Junho knowing. I waited for a Wednesday, Junho's longest day, always out until 9 p.m. I took the notebook to the bathroom, photographed each page clearly, and emailed everything to an account Dealey had created for me. Then I tore the notebook into small pieces and flushed it. Next, my passport. Junho kept documents in a locked study drawer. I had watched him open it enough times to memorize the combination, the way I memorized medication dosages. The evening before Junho's overnight trip, I waited until he was deeply asleep. I had dissolved half a mild sleep tablet into his evening tea, not enough to harm, just enough to deepen rest. I opened the drawer, found my passport, photographed every document inside and emailed it all to Deely. I locked the drawer, returned to bed, and lay beside my husband in the dark. I was ready. The morning of Junho's trip, I acted completely normal. I made breakfast. I packed his travel bag. I kissed him goodbye at the door. He held my face in both hands and looked at me for a long moment. "I'll be back tomorrow evening," he said. "I know," I said. "I'll cook your favorite when you get back." He smiled, warm and real, and for 1 second I saw the man I had fallen for at that restaurant. The one who had learned our letter 1EB9 WA just to make me feel less alone. That man had never existed. He was a role Junho had played to bring me here. I held my smile until the elevator doors closed. Then I went inside, shut the front door, and gave myself 3 minutes to fall apart. I sat on the kitchen floor and pressed my hands over my mouth and let the grief come, for the love I had believed in. For the months I had lost, 3 minutes. Then I stood up, washed my face, and went to the wardrobe. I took out the winter coat, the hidden phone, my passport, the original, replaced in Junho's drawer with a color photocopy. I put everything in a plain tote bag, then I sent Bissy one word: today. Bissy was waiting at the subway station near her apartment. She did not hug me immediately. She took my tote bag and walked beside me quickly, matching my pace without asking questions yet. In her apartment, she had everything ready: clothes, cash. A small first aid kit because Bissy was also a nurse and could not help herself. I called attorney Nam from the prepaid phone. She was calm and professional. Go to the Nigerian embassy first thing in the morning, then to her office with all documentation. Do not use your regular phone, she said. I know. Do not go back to the apartment. I know. Is there anyone who might tell your husband where you are? I thought about Mrs. Park, Mr. One, all the quiet surveillance surrounding me for months. I am with someone I trust, I said. No one else knows. Good, get some sleep. Tomorrow moves in your favor. I hung up. Bissy handed me tea and finally pulled me into a long hug, the kind my mother used to give. The kind that says I have you. I held on and breathed. For the first time in months, I could breathe all the way to the bottom. Junho called my regular phone at 8 p.m. I had left it behind in the apartment, switched on, so its signal stayed there. Deely's idea: let the phone be where you aren't. Junho called twice. Then he called the apartment landline. At 9:15 p.m., Bissy's phone rang, unknown number. She did not pick up. Bissy had set up a message mirroring app with Deely's help, forwarding my texts silently to the prepaid phone. At 10 p.m. a message arrived from Junho: where are you? Call me. 10 minutes later, Amara. I know you're not home, call me now. Then at 10:45, I am not angry, I am worried. Please call me. I stared at the words. 3 different approaches in under an hour: demand, authority, then softness. He was cycling through his tools, trying to find the one that worked on me. None of them worked anymore. I turned off the mirror app. I ate the rice Bissy had cooked. I showered. I prayed the way my mother had taught me, slow and thankful even in the middle of hard things. Then I slept for 6 hours, the deepest sleep I had managed in months. In the morning, I would walk into the Nigerian embassy and begin taking my life back. But tonight I slept. The embassy was cold and bright and smelled like official paperwork. The consular officer, a calm, broad-shouldered man named Mr. Adiola, listened to everything without interrupting. I laid it all out. The documents, the photographs of my notebook pages. The photos from Junho's locked drawer. Deely's time-stamped records of our hidden communications. Mr. Adiola studied everything carefully, then he looked at me, Mrs. Kwon or Ms. Osei, whichever you prefer. Osei, I said immediately, please. He nodded. Ms. Osei, you documented, you planned, you kept yourself safe. That is not easy. I did not cry. I had expected to, but I did not. What happens now? I asked. He explained: consular protection, coordination with Korean immigration authorities, connection to a legal aid organization. Attorney Nam was already known to them. Things moved faster than I expected because I had the paperwork and because Mr. Adiola was, beneath his official manner, genuinely angry on my behalf in the quiet way that decent people get angry. When I walked out at noon, Bissy was on the steps. The sky was pale blue and cold. A vendor nearby was selling roasted chestnuts, and the smell was warm and ordinary and wonderful. Well, Bissy said. It started, I said. She grabbed my hand and squeezed. It has been 4 months since I walked out of that apartment. The legal process is still moving, but Attorney Nam says it is going well. Junho cannot come near me. A protection order through the Korean courts made sure of that. I am back on the patient floors at Hanul Hospital. Mrs. Cho reinstated me. I thanked her and went back to work. Bissy and I eat dinner every Thursday. She cooks too much, I eat too much, neither of us minds. I spoke to my mother last night, long and unhurried. I told her most of the truth. She cried. My father said, "You are your own person, Amara. You always were." I told Dealey I owed him more than I could say. He wrote back. You did most of it yourself, I just held the rope. Surviving is not one dramatic moment. It is 100 small, terrifying choices, made in bathrooms and break rooms, with your face perfectly calm. Love that cuts you off from people who know your name is not love. A man who needs to own your world has no room for who you are. I am 25. I am a nurse. My name is Amara Osei, and I belong to no one but myself.